The year was 1865, and the air in Wyoming Territory hung heavy with smoke, grit, and the quiet threat of death. At the edge of a dust-bitten trading post, a figure stood still as stone. Tall, broad-shouldered, hat pulled low. Cashin Ridge didn't speak. He never had much use for words. His revolver, slung low on his hip, told most of the stories he needed to tell. Inside the post, trouble brewed like a storm behind saloon doors. Voices rose. Boots scraped the floor. Men who'd ridden hard from the south, fresh with the stink of gunpowder and bad news, were arguing about stolen rifles. Cashin watched from the porch, chewing the stem of a matchstick. He wasn't here for them. He was tracking a horse thief, 3 days gone. But trouble had a way of finding him. Then the girl collapsed. She dropped near the watering trough, face pale as river stone, one hand clutching a small leather satchel. Blood soaked her skirts at the hip. The townsfolk hesitated. No one moved. No one wanted to be next if bullets started flying. Cashin stepped off the porch. Gunfire cracked from inside the post. Men screamed. A chair flew through the window, followed by a body. Chaos roared out like a fire. Cashin bent low, grabbed the girl by the waist, and heaved her up like a sack of grain. She groaned, but didn't stir. Behind him, 2 men burst through the door, guns blazing. Cashin ran. The saddle was already cinched on his dun-colored horse, Dusty. He threw the girl up first, climbed behind her, and kicked hard. Dust flew. Shots followed. One grazed his arm. Another split the brim of his hat. But the horse knew speed. They were out of range before the second reload. She woke at dusk, the firelight flickering against her dirt-smeared cheek. Where? Her voice rasped like sandpaper. She tried to sit up, then gasped. "You're hurt," he said. It was the first word he'd spoken since noon. She blinked, trying to focus. "You, who are you? Where's Dr. Bennett?" "Dead." She flinched, then pressed her hands to her face. Cashin poured water from a canteen and held it out. She stared at it for a moment, then took a slow sip. "I didn't ask to be rescued," she said, voice thin but biting. "I didn't ask to do it," he answered. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the fire's crackle and the distant yip of a coyote. She turned slightly, wincing at the pain in her leg. "My name's Annalise Ward. I was with the Union Army, a field nurse." Cashin nodded once. "Figured. You a bounty hunter?" He shook his head. "Used to be." "You talk like a man who's done more than his share of killing." He didn't answer. She leaned back against a rolled-up saddlebag. Her hair, matted and tangled, stuck to her cheeks. In her lap, the leather satchel sat unopened. She kept one hand on it, fingers twitching now, and then, "I had medicine," she said, "in the satchel. For Dr. Bennett. He was sick. We were trying to reach Fort Bridger. Her voice cracked. We'd only made it halfway." Cashin added a branch to the fire. "You'll ride with me. I'll get you closer." "I can't pay." "I don't need your money." She gave him a long look, studying the weathered lines on his face, the scar along his jaw, the blood-stained sleeve. "Then why?" He shrugged. "Didn't sit right, leaving you there." They rode at first light, the sun barely cresting the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pink and ash. Annalise rode in front again, her leg bound in a makeshift splint, her arms wrapped tight around the saddle horn. She barely spoke, conserving her strength, though her eyes were sharp now, watching the trees, the ridgelines, always alert. By mid-morning, they reached the edge of the Snake River. The water ran high, with snowmelt, brown and angry. "We have to cross?" she asked. Cashin dismounted and studied the banks. "No bridge. The ford's upstream, but it'll cost us a day." She looked behind them, nerves twitching in her jaw. "They might still be chasing us." Cashin didn't reply. He swung back up, motioned for her to hold tight, and rode in. The horse fought the current. Water climbed its flanks, then its back. Annalise whimpered once, but held on. Then the horse slipped. Cashin shouted, a sharp, wordless cry. He kicked free, grabbed Annalise's coat, and hauled her up. She screamed as they plunged beneath the surface. He found footing, lifted her onto a half-submerged rock, and shoved the horse's reins into her hands. "You alive?" he barked. She coughed, water pouring from her mouth, but nodded. He climbed beside her, chest heaving. The current tore past them, dragging sticks, leaves, and chunks of mud. "Cashin," she said between coughs. "Your arm." He looked down. Blood seeped from the old graze, reopened by the river. He ignored it. They crossed the rest on foot, half wading, half stumbling. By the time they reached the other side, the sun was near overhead, and Annalise collapsed on the bank, shivering. Cashin knelt beside her, pulled off his hat, and laid it over her eyes. "For the sun," he muttered. She smiled faintly. "That's twice you've saved me now." "Don't keep count," he said. Later, as he lit another fire and hung their clothes near the smoke to dry, she finally opened her satchel. Inside were 3 vials of laudanum, 2 bandages, a letter sealed in blue wax, and a folded daguerreotype. She didn't show him the photo, but he saw the way her hands shook. "That man who died," he said, "he kin to you?" She shook her head. "He was the last good man I knew." Cashin stared into the flames. "Then you've met 2 now." She looked up. "For a long time," she said nothing. "Then, maybe I have." That night, the fire crackled low, and the prairie whispered all around them. She leaned back on her saddle blanket, eyes half-lidded, watching the man who never said much, but always acted when it counted. Out there, somewhere beyond the hills, men still hunted them. Bullets would find them again, like they always did. But for now, they had breath, warmth, and firelight. And in that flickering glow, Annalise Ward didn't feel quite so broken anymore. The forest pressed in thick around them, the pines tall and whispering with wind. Cashin moved ahead, boots near silent on the soft earth, rifle across his back, eyes scanning shadows. Annalise limped behind, leaning on a branch he'd cut down and shaped for her. Her skirts dragged through the pine needles, damp and torn. Her breath came shallow, but she didn't complain. They'd gone a mile since the river crossing. Cashin had said little, as usual, but she didn't mind the quiet. Not now. There was something calming in the way he moved, measured, certain. She trusted it more than words. Then the horses stopped. Dusty froze, ears twitching. Cashin held up a hand. Annalise paused behind him, every nerve lit like a fuse. A growl broke the silence. "Low. Close." Cashin turned slowly. Between 2 trees, a shape emerged, gray fur, sharp yellow eyes. Then another, a second wolf, then a third, a whole pack, lean and hungry, watching from the brush. "Don't run," he said. "They'll chase." "I can't run," she whispered. "Good." The lead wolf stepped forward, teeth bared. Cashin drew his rifle in one smooth motion and fired. The crack of the shot echoed through the trees. The lead wolf dropped, twitching. The others sprang. He reloaded fast, fired again. Another fell. Then the rest scattered into chaos. Teeth, fur, snarls. Cashin swung the rifle like a club at one that got too close, but a gray blur leapt and sank its teeth into his left arm. He shouted in pain, dropped the rifle. Blood sprayed the leaves. Annalise didn't think. She grabbed a burning stick from their fire pit and lunged, screaming. She swung wildly, flames licking at the air. One wolf yelped and fled. Another turned, ears back. She struck again. Then the forest went still. Cashin leaned against a tree, panting, blood dripping from his sleeve. That was reckless, he said. She was still shaking, so was standing still and waiting to be eaten. He almost smiled. Almost. She helped him sit, tore strips from her petticoat, and began wrapping the wound. Her hands trembled as she worked. "You've done this before," he muttered. "Too many times." She tightened the cloth and looked him dead in the eye. "I watched men die on tables made of barrels. Intense reeking of blood. I stitched limbs I knew would rot. There were nights I didn't know whose screams were louder, the wounded or the ones watching." Cashin didn't interrupt. "I told myself it mattered. That every life I saved counted for something." Her voice cracked. "Then I started counting the ones I couldn't save. I lost my brother at Antietam, my fiancé at Cold Harbor, my hope at Fredericksburg." The wind sighed through the branches. He reached into his coat, pulled out a flask, and offered it. She took a swig, coughed hard, then laughed bitterly. "Whiskey still burns the same. I lost someone too, he said quietly. A kid, boy maybe 10. Hid him in a root cellar while his pa fought off raiders. I came too late. They burned the place down. Annalise looked at him, eyes soft. You remember his name? He nodded. Eli? They sat like that a long while, silence settling between them. Not empty, but full of things unsaid. She touched his arm, just above the bandage. You could have let me die back at the post. He looked at her, the firelight dancing in his tired eyes. But I didn't. She leaned closer, her voice low. You're not as silent as you think, Cashin Ridge. He didn't reply. Didn't need to. The town was nothing but splinters and silence. A ghost clinging to the last breath of a lawless land. Shutters hung loose. Doors creaked. An old sign swayed in the wind. Mill Creek Trading Post. Cashin reined in the horse, eyes scanning every rooftop, every broken window. Annalise, pale but alert, sat behind him, her hands resting lightly on his waist. You sure this is safe? She asked. No. They rode in slow. Cashin spotted the tracks before the first shot rang out, fresh hoof prints, too many. The bullet cracked the air, missing his head by inches. Down, he barked, just as the second shot shattered a window to their left. He leapt from the saddle, dragging Annalise with him behind a rain barrel. Gunfire echoed, bouncing through the empty town. Dusty bolted, vanishing down the street. They followed us, she breathed. Seems they want what's in your satchel. It's just medicine. Then they're not here for that. Cashin peeked around the barrel and fired. A figure fell from a balcony. Another darted across the alley, returned fire. With splintered inches from Annalise's head. Gun, he said. She handed him the spare revolver she'd tucked into her coat. Her hands trembled. You stay behind cover. I'm not hiding again. Their eyes locked. No time to argue. He nodded once, then rolled out, firing twice, sharp clean. One outlaw screamed. Another cursed. A shadow moved on the rooftop. Cashin turned too late. The rifle cracked. He dropped. Annalise screamed and crawled to him. Blood soaked his side. His hand clutched her sleeve, jaw clenched. I've got you, she whispered. You need to run. I'm done running. She tore open his shirt, pressed both hands to the wound. Another shot hit the barrel inches from her head. She didn't flinch. Reaching into her satchel, she grabbed a bandage, then her last vial of laudanum. Footsteps. Close. She stood, revolver in hand, and fired. The man fell with a grunt. Silence returned. Cashin's breath was shallow, but steady. You came out shooting, he said weakly. You would have done the same. She helped him sit, slung his arm over her shoulders. They limped into the abandoned saloon. There was dust, broken glass, and the sharp smell of old whiskey. She laid him across the bar, started sewing flesh like she had 100 times before. As she stitched, he watched her, quiet, eyes heavy. You carry ghosts, he said. So do you. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in days smiled. Not much, just enough. Outside, the wind carried the scent of gunpowder and pine. But inside, something new was beginning to breathe.